Hello, everybody. Once again, this is Fred Wanko coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bold Talk on Island TV. And as usual, I like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on where you are around the world. If you are a Yoruba person in Lagos and you support Peter Obi or any significant Igbo cause in Lagos, your life may be in danger. But even if not your life, you're definitely among the endangered species in Lagos. For fairness, I'm not saying Bola Ahmed Tinubu instructed this, but more so, I'm saying that the bigotry that Bayo Onanuga preached in Lagos has influenced these area boys so much that life for a Yoruba person, not an Igbo person, a Yoruba person that does not support Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Lagos is an endangered species. Today's main story is about Cuadri Alabi, but it's at the end of the video, so you could stay and watch. Cuadri Alabi is the young man who supported Peter Obi in the last election, standing in front of his motorcade, and the motorcade stopped, and Peter Obi became a friend of that young man. But what this young man has gone through, simply because he supported Peter Obi, a young Yoruba man, not an Igbo man, is a story you need to listen to. Today's story is a two-parter. The first part of the story is about Nigeria and how Nigeria is lagging behind countries like Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa when it comes to leadership and some of the reasons why those lags are there. That will be the first part of my story. Then I'll conclude with the Cuadri Alabi story. For so many years, the question had always been, will Ghana and Kenya overtake Nigeria both regionally in their respective regions as the powers that the international community look up to in those regions, or whether Nigeria will be able to fence them off and stabilize and reestablish itself to take the place of the promise it always held. The reality is that Nigeria is even no longer in the picture. And by the time Nigeria is finished with by Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Kenya and Ghana may be so much more ahead of Nigeria that Nigeria will be relegated to second-class citizenry in that region. That's if it exists as a country. The way things are, I doubt if Nigeria can survive as a country. Even though in my commentary as a patriotic Nigerian, you hear me say things about what it takes for us to come back, deep down inside me, I think Nigeria is finished. I only mentioned Donald Trump in the introduction because I live in America and I see so many similarities between the cluelessness of Donald Trump and the cluelessness of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But this is actually about Nigeria. And I'm talking about Nigeria relative to emerging African countries that are now the main focus of discussion internationally when African policies are formulated by other countries outside Africa. The main reason this is important is taking Ghana and Kenya as example, but throwing in South Africa, which is miles ahead of Nigeria. The reason those countries are more significant in discussions about Africa today is that the reality is that Nigeria has no basis to be placed in that discussion. Those countries are united countries where they do things as one people. Nigeria is not a country. Nigeria is just being forcefully held together by forces that benefit individually or at best tribally from keeping Nigeria one, because the reality is that there is no basis for unity in Nigeria because the leaders for the last 10 years between Muhammadu Buhari and Bola Ahmed Tinubu have done nothing to unite the country. If anything, they've been bent on dividing the country so they can achieve their goals. If you talk about Nigeria, the discussion is crime, safety, and it discourages people from going to Nigeria. How can a country grow when its people are leaving because they no longer feel that their families are safe in Nigeria? It's now a thing of pride for those who can afford it to take their families and move them to the United States or Canada or UK. Now even Ghana and South Africa and Kenya and Gabon and all those places are becoming safe havens for Nigerians who are running away from crime. Population flight, they call it the Japa syndrome. A country that loses its best talent to other countries, even when it stabilizes, is going to take decades, if ever, to bring back the talent that it lost during its slip-sliding years. The one reason why both the African neighbors and the major international players, United States, UK, and France, even give a damn about Nigeria is the fear that if Nigeria doesn't survive, Africa cannot handle 200 million refugees flowing out of Nigeria into different parts of Africa, and sooner or later they are going to start overflowing into Europe. And Europe is very concerned about that. If it wasn't for that concern, if Nigeria was a country of 25 million or 50 million, I doubt if anybody will care to rescue a country whose leaders are responsible for where they are. Tribalism. How do you build unity in a country where the overwhelming consideration for cooperating on any matter is what tribe is a person from? And then you have some other tribes, they know who they are, who are so bigoted and so tribalistic that everything they think about concerning Nigeria revolves around how it benefits their tribe. It doesn't matter how much it benefits Nigeria, as long as it doesn't benefit their tribe. To hell with it. And you call us one country? Nigeria has now become a basis for discussion in Ghana on how to run a country and avoid disunity. The question about whether Ghana, Kenya, or South Africa will surpass Nigeria has become irrelevant. It has already happened. The question is, can Nigeria ever get back to a point where it can even be part of that discussion? At this stage, for any fair observer of what's going on in Nigeria, I strongly believe that the answer to that is that Nigeria is finished. Nigeria no longer belongs in the same discussions when you're talking about Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. Do you recall the young man in 2023 in Lagos, a street hawker, who was also going to school, learning tailoring, who was so impressed with the obedient movement? A young Yoruba man, his name is Yusuf Quadri Alabi. His father had died a few years earlier, left his mom with 4 children. He's the youngest. He was so impressed with Peter Obi that he put his arms across and stood in front of the motorcade to get Peter Obi's attention. That young man, in the last few years, has been locked up at Kirikiri prison. His crime is that he supported Peter Obi. And that's why my title references the fact that if you're a Yoruba man in Lagos and you support a competitive Igbo person that is competing fairly for something with a Yoruba person, your life may be in danger. Let's hear about Mr. Alabi, Cuadri Alabi's case. He was walking home after work, and some area boys who had animosities against him since the election and have been harassing his family where they lived because they supported Peter Obi. Gang attacked this young man, took him to the police station, and said they caught him where he was committing armed robbery. The young man did not commit armed robbery. The sadness, which is the bigger sad part of the case, is that the police, more or less in cahoot with the area boys and whoever the Tinubu forces that don't like this family, framed his age from 17 years old to 18 years old when they presented him in court. And being 18 years old, he's not a minor. The magistrate sentenced him and they locked him up in Kirikiri and tried along with him. When he was at the police station, they brought out these 4 men, allegedly armed robbers, and said that he was caught with those 4 men. The young man didn't know any of these men and has been languishing in jail until an international charity organization who was aware of his antics with Peter Obi heard he came to prison just to do their charity work in prison, ran across the young man, brought his story out, took it to social media. Peter Obi got a hold of it for the first time, paid bail to get this young man out, hired a lawyer. Make a long story short, in the end, the DPP in that police station released Cuadri Alabi. Cuadri Alabi did not steal anything. He's not an armed robber. His crime is that he supports a candidate and I'm not pinning this on Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What happens in these cases is that overzealous area boys who think that they are supporting Bola Ahmed Tinubu now make enemies of people who don't support Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So for fairness, I'm not saying Bola Ahmed Tinubu instructed this, but more so, I'm saying that the bigotry that Bayo Ononuga preached in Lagos has influenced these area boys so much that life for a Yoruba person, not an Igbo person, a Yoruba person that does not support Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Lagos is an endangered species. I'd like to hand you over so you hear the story from Cuadri Alabi's lawyer, his mother, and Cuadri Alabi himself. Sorry, the Cuadri Alabi side of the audio may not be too clear, but by the sentiments, you could tell what's going on. It's a very touchy story, but thank God the young man is free.
I can confirm to you that at exactly 2:30 p.m., Mr. Alabi, Yusuf Quadri Alabi, was physically handed over to me by the authorities of the Nigerian Correctional Service. Recall that about 3 hours ago, the court discharged him following the advice of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Lagos State, where the DPP found that Cuadri Alabi has no case to answer, that the allegation of armed robbery brought and made by the police is without substance, without evidence, and that he was innocent. However, as you may be aware, when a court makes an order discharging a person, there is an administrative process that has to follow, which is basically for the signing, the preparation and signing of his release warrant. Until that warrant is physically handed over to the correctional officer, it cannot be physically released. So now the warrant was signed and handed over, and Cuadri is now free and is going home and is no longer returning to the medium security custodial center. Let me thank all Nigerians and the media for the interest they have shown in the case of this boy. Like I keep saying, you may not understand Cuadri's case until you have met Cuadri. Those of you that have now seen him, you don't need to have power of clairvoyance. You don't need to be a prophet to look at this boy, maybe by looking at him, to know that, to have reason to question the allegation made against him. So for the fact that a Nigerian child was subjected to this horrendous treatment since January, incarcerated without cause, is unacceptable. Now that he has been released, we have grave concerns about his safety and that of his family. As I speak to you, it is not safe for him or his mother, who is standing beside me, to return to their home. So as I speak, Cuadri is basically homeless because their current home is not safe for them. There are reasons why I'm saying that. Apart from the fact that you are all aware of the circumstances that led to him being abducted, he was not arrested. Cuadri was abducted by so-called area boys. So, handed over to the police. The same people behind his travels, they have not left Nigeria, they have not left Lagos, they are still within that community. So it is only common sense that his family should be relocated somewhere else. So we'll be appealing to Nigerians of good conscience. Please extend a hand of help to this family, and Cuadri in particular. The most pressing need is for us to get an alternative accommodation for them, get them accommodation elsewhere, where his family can stay. They don't have the means. You can see it yourself. The second need is that even though he became momentarily famous during the elections, quite sadly, that fame, was not, the benefit of that fame was not sustained. So he basically went back to the streets doing petty things. So currently, he needs some stable form of employment. He has started learning tailoring. I don't know whether he would want to continue with that, but the point is that Cuadri needs some form of rehabilitation that will enable him to be self-sufficient and useful to the country. So we are appealing to any spirited member of the public out there that may want to assist him beyond just the accommodation. Please reach out to me. We'll be able to bring that help to his family. And then lastly, I want to restate for emphasis, and I say this without apology, and I'm ready to say this before anybody in this country. I'm ready to say this before anybody. The divisional police officer of Amoguko divisional headquarters has to be removed. If the commissioner of police does not sanction him, along with the other officers who took part in this act of evil, what the commissioner of police Lagos will be telling Nigerians and the whole world is that the Lagos police now connive with criminal elements to abduct children and falsely frame them for armed robbery. So if the Lagos Police Command has no hand in this travesty, this abomination that has been done, if the IG does not consent to what has been done to Cuadri, we want to see an immediate action taken against the officers who were behind him. We are not going to withdraw this demand. And as I have said, the police must also compensate him, and we are demanding for 100 million. Our last demand is public apology. If these demands are not made, we don't bluff. If these demands are not made within 14 days, I can confirm to you that I will be approaching the court. I will also be going directly to the Police Service Commission. One message we want to pass clearly is that Cuadri's case is not an isolated case. We are all discussing Cuadri today because his case has come to public knowledge. So Nigerians should ask the DPO of Amokoko, how many more Nigerians has he falsely framed for armed robbery? How many more Nigerians has he falsely framed for murder? How many more people have they thrown false allegations on and had them remanded in prison or the custodial center? This travesty has to be addressed, and it is in the interest of the Lagos Police Command to understand the gravity of what has happened As I want to repeat, we are not going to withdraw this demand. And we are ready to state this demand before anybody and authority in this country. So I thank you once again for coming out. And I want to appreciate all of you who have stood by him, who have shown patience with this family. Nobody should ever have to suffer what Cuadri has suffered. I, as a lawyer, you were aware in 2022, I went to prison for 1 month in this country. Because I took up a case against the governor. Yeah. So I have a practical experience of what it means to be wrongly incarcerated. And that is why nobody should be innocent, no innocent person should ever be.
Can we speak to Cuadri about his experience in detention?
Well, you can ask, but he may not be able to say a lot.
Cuadri, can you share with us what happened? Were you tortured? Did you come to under any form of abuse? What happened in prison?
How do you feel now that you're free?
What do you want to? What do you want to do now? Your lawyer has said that you learned tailoring, but what do you want to do going forward? You want to go to school? Can you let him learn?
People should help my mother because I don't have anything, don't have anything to do. Please, anybody can help me, please. And once you live well, you are staying, want to sleep well. Everybody can help us. Thank Nigeria, my lawyer, my family, thank all of them. There was no promotion.
You can go ahead. How do you recall this case because the instance of right violation in Nigeria?
Instance of what?
For this case, brings us child right violation.
Well, there are many children like Cuadri in our correctional centers. The juvenile justice system in Nigeria needs to be revisited. It needs to be revisited. And what I have seen from experience, this is not the first time. I've had these battles with the police before. The good news is that we have always defeated them. And this is not going to be an exception. What you will find in each of these cases is that when police arrest minors, most times they will falsify their ages. You heard the magistrate made their point. If they had disclosed that Cuadri was 17, not the 18, the magistrate would have asked questions. The magistrate would have had interest in knowing why he should be sent to where adults are being detained. But they lied about his age. They lied about his age. They lied about everything. How can you say a young boy committed armed robbery and you now bring him, attach him to strangers and say they are his casemates and the whole country is moving on? That is not civilization. And then you go back, the DPO possibly has children, he possibly has a wife in his house, but he went home to sleep. He's not bothered, and you are doing this to a child. People he has never met, he doesn't have any relationship with. You said that his casemates for armed robbery. Meanwhile, even the touts that abducted him and brought him to me, they claim he was involved in street fighting, which is not true. And suddenly you brought him to court for armed robbery. This is an abomination. And the entire country should be alarmed. Should be alarmed. It's an embarrassment to the country. That is why I'm saying, if the Commissioner of Police is not part of this evil conspiracy, we want to see the action he's going to take against the DPO. We are not going to compromise on that demand. The DPO of Amokoko must be removed. We are not, under no condition, even at gunpoint, we are not going to shift on that demand. He must be removed.
I will speak to the mother, please. Mommy, say English, then Yoruba. Yoruba, anyone, the valley so. báwo ni ẹ ṣe báwo nínú yìí ṣe dùn sí báwo lẹ ṣe ló ṣe ṣe lára yín sí lẹ́sẹ̀ ọmọ yìí.
inú mi dùn mo dúpẹ́ fún àkọ́kọ́ pẹ́ mi lọ́wọ́ Mrs. Ansan torí pé kí ni òun ni ẹni tí ó fẹ́ kí ọ̀rọ̀ yìí yànjú torí ní ìgbà náà ó lọ síbi iṣẹ́ ń aṣọ ṣẹ́gun lọ́rùn ọlọ́pàá kò mú àwọn bọ́ìsì mi lọ wọ́n láti ní àwọn ọlọ́pàá abẹ́ ẹ̀ kú sí ìfojú ọdún mẹ́ta lọ tí bàbá ẹ̀ kú torí owó tí wọ́n fún ẹ ló yẹ kí ra màálù ó yẹ kí ra rẹ̀ sí ìfọwọ́ bọ́ìsì ọmọ mi ni wọ́n fún yóò tẹ̀ ẹ̀ mọ̀ owó òtún ọ̀pọ̀ ilé nìkan la gbà níbẹ̀ tó ẹ̀fẹ́ rí sójú àtọ́ ẹgbẹ́ ìyẹ̀sì bó ṣe rìn ọmọ ilé ẹ̀ lọ síbi iṣẹ́ ṣó ti yé yín àmọ́ mo dúpẹ́ lọ́dọ̀ Ọlọ́run mo dẹ̀ dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ gbogbo ẹni tó àdàdà lọ́ọ̀yà yìí èèyàn ni wọ́n àwọn méjèèjì àti Peter Obi Ọlọ́run ní pábà yìí ní àgbàrọ̀ náà.
Mọ́mí ṣàkọ́bí ni àbí ọmọ mi lè lẹ́kọ̀ọ́.
That's my last born mi ni.
How many other children?
ọmọ mẹ́rin péré náà ni mo bí obìnrin kan ṣoṣo ọkùnrin mẹ́ta. Mrs. Bola Alabi.
Thank you.
That's the one Nigeria we have. That's the kind of society that Bayo Ononuga and his thugs and his bigots are building in Nigeria. And like I said earlier, I am not pointing fingers at Bola Ahmed Tinubu in this case, but I'm directly pointing fingers at Bayo Ononuga, his propaganda against Igbos, and this is only the beginning. Unless the laws in Nigeria address these bigoted problems that people like Bayo Ononuga have specialized in. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Fred Wankwo coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bold Talk on Island TV. And until next time, good night and God bless.
Tonight I think of my home, the home where I was born. I think of my family and the poor farmhouse we had. There in my home, we had no sophistication. We had no timepiece, the cockcrow and the sun, all we had. Rise early at sunup, go to the farms, drive the monkeys away from the maize farms, and the birds away from the rice farms. Come back home at sundown, sometimes a little later. Women get busy on pounded yam.